The funeral was held on a Thursday, the kind of gray, rain-soaked Thursday that makes you believe that the universe is mourning with you, or that the universe is indifferent, or that the universe has no opinion at all about the death of a good man, a husband of 22 years, a father of a 12-year-old daughter, a partner in a law firm that he had built with his own hands and his own name. I stood at the grave, my daughter Elena beside me, her hand in mine, her small fingers cold to spite. The wool gloves I had made her wear, and I watched them lower the casket into the ground, the casket that held the body of my husband, Thomas, the man I had loved since I was 22 years old, the man who had proposed to me in this very cemetery, on a dare, because he said he wanted to know that I would follow him anywhere, even here. My name is not important because this story is not about who I am. It is about what I did when the woman who had given birth to my husband tried to take everything I had built, everything we had built, everything he had left behind. But you can call me Nora. I am 54 years old, an attorney, 19 years of practice, specializing in inheritance law, which meant that I had seen this exact scenario play out dozens of times, had counseled widows and widowers, had helped them navigate the treacherous waters of grief and greed, had warned them about the relatives who had come out of the woodwork, the vultures who would circle, the people who would try to take what was not theirs, and I had never imagined that I would become one of those widows, that I would be the one standing at the grave, watching the vultures gather, watching my husband's mother sharpen her talons. Margaret, my mother-in-law, stood on the other side of the grave, dressed in black, her face the same shade of gray as the sky. She was 68 years old, a former accountant, a woman who had spent her life counting other people's money and resenting them for having more than she did. She had never liked me, had made that clear from the first moment Thomas brought me home, had told him that I was not good enough, that I was, after his future, that I would take everything and leave him with nothing. And Thomas, who loved his mother despite everything, had laughed it off, had told me not to worry, had promised that he would always protect me from her. But Thomas was dead now, and there was no one to protect me, no one except myself and my daughter and the law and the evidence that I had been collecting for years, not because I had suspected that Margaret would try to take everything, but because I was an inheritance attorney, and inheritance attorneys know that the best defense against greed is documentation, is paper, is proof, is a trail that no one can erase. I try to bring you new stories every day. Your like, subscription, and comment truly inspire me to keep going. Let's continue. The reception after the funeral was held at our house, the brick two-story with a terrace and the garden where Thomas had spent hours planting roses, the house we had bought together when Elena was born, the house that was in both of our names, the house that Margaret had always coveted, had always believed should have been hers, because she had raised the man who paid for it. Never mind that Thomas and I had paid for it together. Never mind that I had contributed my own earnings, my own savings, my own labor. Never mind that the deed was in both of our names and that Margaret had no claim to it whatsoever. Margaret cornered me in the kitchen, while Elena was upstairs with her friends, while the guests mingled in the living room, while the caterers cleared the plates and refilled the wine glasses. She stood by the sink, her arms crossed, her eyes hard, her voice low, the voice of a woman who had been waiting for this moment for 22 years. Nora, we need to talk. We need to talk about the house, about the firm, about everything. Thomas would have wanted me to have it. You know, he loved me, I was his mother, and you were just his wife. You can find another husband, but I can't find another son. Margaret, I'm not going to discuss this now, not today, not at Thomas's funeral reception, not with Elena upstairs. We can talk tomorrow, or next week, or whenever you're ready to be reasonable, but not today. There's nothing to discuss, Nora. I'm taking the house, and I'm taking the law firm. All of it, everything except the girl. You can keep the girl. She's your daughter. I don't want her, but everything else is mine. I did not react, did not scream, did not cry, did not give her the satisfaction of seeing me break. I had been preparing for this moment for years, not because I knew that Margaret would try to take everything, but because I was an attorney, and attorneys prepare for the worst, even when they hope for the best. I had files, documents, recordings, evidence that would destroy Margaret's claims, evidence that would prove that Thomas had wanted me to have everything, evidence that would prove that Margaret had been trying to manipulate him for years, evidence that would prove that she had forged his signature on documents that gave her access to accounts that were not hers. Margaret, I'm going to say this once, and I'm going to say it clearly. You are not taking my house, you are not taking my law firm, and you are not taking my daughter. Not now, not ever. You can try, you can hire lawyers, you can file papers, you can drag me through the courts, but you will not win because I have the truth on my side, and I have the evidence to prove it. Margaret smiled, a thin, cold smile, the smile of a woman who had already won, who had already planned, who had already executed her strategy, and I realized, in that moment, that she had been preparing for this too, that she had been laying the groundwork for years, that she had been waiting for Thomas to die so that she could strike. We'll see, Nora, we'll see. You think you're so clever, you think you're so prepared, but you have no idea what's coming, you have no idea what I have, you have no idea what Thomas signed before he died. She walked away, and I stood in the kitchen, my hands gripping the edge of the counter, my heart pounding, my mind racing, and I knew that the battle had begun, that the woman who had given birth to my husband was now my enemy, and that I would have to fight her with every weapon I had. The first letter from Margaret's lawyer arrived 3 days after the funeral. A thick envelope with a return address that I did not recognize. I opened it in my office, the same office where Thomas and I had worked side by side for 19 years, the same office where we had built our practice, our reputation, our lives, and I read the document inside. A petition for control of the estate, a request for the court to award Margaret the house, the law firm, and a significant portion of our savings, claiming that Thomas had changed his mind before he died, that he had expressed a desire to provide for his mother, that he had signed documents that I was concealing. I read the document 3 times, each time feeling a cold anger settle deeper into my chest, the kind of anger that does not burn but freezes, the kind of anger that makes you calm, makes you focused, makes you dangerous. Margaret had hired a lawyer, a man named Bradford Stone, who had a reputation for being aggressive and underhanded, the kind of lawyer who would say anything, do anything to win, and he had filed a petition that was full of lies, half-truths, and distortions, a petition that would have been laughable if it were not so devastating. I called my partner, a woman named Sarah Chin, who had been with the firm for 15 years and who knew Thomas almost as well as I did. Sarah, I need you to come over. I need you to help me with something. Margaret is trying to take everything, and I need to prepare. I'll be there in 20 minutes, Nora. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Margaret always seemed like such a sweet old lady. I never knew she was capable of this. No one ever does, Sarah. No one ever knows what people are capable of until they're grieving, until they're vulnerable, until they're alone. That's when the vultures come out, and Margaret is the vulture in chief. The days that followed were a blur of legal paperwork, sleepless nights, and the slow, methodical work of building a defense against a woman who had been planning her attack for years. Margaret had filed a petition that was full of lies, claiming that Thomas had signed documents giving her power of attorney, that he had transferred assets into her name before his death, that he had expressed a desire to leave everything to her because I was unfit and untrustworthy, and she had done all of this while I was still in mourning, while I was still trying to explain to my 12-year-old daughter why her father was never coming home, while I was still learning how to sleep in a bed that no longer smelled like him. I had not told Elena about the legal battle, could not bring myself to burden her with the ugly truth of her grandmother's greed. She was already struggling, already grieving, already trying to make sense of a world that had taken her father without warning, and I would not add to her pain by telling her that the woman who used to bake her cookies and take her to the park was now trying to take her home, her future, her security. Mommy, why is Grandma Margaret so angry? She came to the house yesterday and she was yelling at the door. I heard her from my room. She said things that I didn't understand. She said something about the house, about the firm, about you. Why is she so angry? Grandma Margaret is having a hard time, baby. She's sad, she's grieving, and sometimes when people are sad, they say things they don't mean, they do things they wouldn't normally do, but I need you to trust me, okay? I need you to trust that I am going to take care of everything, that I am going to protect you, that I am going to make sure that we are okay. Are we going to lose the house, Mommy? Are we going to have to move? Are we going to be poor? No, baby, we are not going to lose the house. We are not going to have to move. We are not going to be poor. I promise you, I promise you, I promise you. I held her in my arms, the way I had held her when she was small, when she was scared, when she needed me to be strong, and I felt the weight of her trust, her faith, her love, and I knew that I could not fail her, that I would not fail her, that I would fight Margaret with every weapon I had, and that I would win, because losing was not an option. Not for me, not for Elena, not for the life that Thomas and I had built together. I try to bring you new stories every day. Your like, subscription, and comment truly inspire me to keep going. Let's continue. Sarah arrived at my office the next morning, her briefcase full of documents, her face grim but determined. She had been with the firm for 15 years, had seen me through the best and the worst, had become my closest friend and my most trusted colleague, and she was not going to let Margaret destroy everything we had built without a fight. I've reviewed Margaret's petition, Nora. It's full of holes. She claims that Thomas signed a power of attorney giving her control over his assets, but there's no evidence that he ever signed such a document. She claims that he transferred property into her name, but the deed to the house is still in both of your names, and the firm's partnership agreement clearly states that in the event of a partner's death, the surviving partner inherits full control. She's counting on me being too grief-stricken to fight back, Sarah. She's counting on me being too weak, too overwhelmed, too scared to challenge her. She's counting on me to roll over and let her take everything, but she's wrong. She's very wrong, because I am not weak, I am not overwhelmed, I am not scared, I am angry, and I am ready. What's our strategy? How do you want to proceed? We document everything, Sarah. We gather every piece of evidence, every bank statement, every deed, every contract, every text message, every email, every conversation. We build a case that is so airtight, so undeniable, so overwhelming that Margaret's lawyer won't be able to find a single crack. And then we wait. We wait for her to make a mistake. We wait for her to overplay her hand. We wait for the perfect moment to strike. Sarah nodded, opened her briefcase, and began to work, and I watched her. This woman who had been by my side for 15 years, who had believed in me when I doubted myself, who had held my hand when Thomas was dying, who had promised to help me rebuild my life, and I felt a surge of gratitude so intense that it almost hurt. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for being here. Thank you for not abandoning me. Thank you for fighting with me. You don't have to thank me, Nora. You're my partner, you're my friend, you're my family, and I would never abandon you, not now, not ever, not for anyone, not even for Margaret. The evidence was there, hidden in plain sight, in the filing cabinets of my office, in the safe behind the painting in my living room, in the old leather briefcase that Thomas had used for years and that I had never been able to bring myself to open. I had been documenting everything for years, not because I suspected Margaret, but because I was an inheritance attorney. And inheritance attorneys know that the only way to protect your clients is to protect yourself, to keep records, to save receipts, to document every conversation, every promise, every threat. The recordings were the most damning, the ones I had made of Margaret's phone calls, her visits, her rants, her threats. She had been careful, had always been careful, had never said anything incriminating in front of witnesses, but she had not been careful enough, had not realized that I was recording her, had not known that every time she called to demand money, to threaten legal action, to accuse me of stealing her son, I was saving the evidence, storing it in a file labeled Margaret that I had been keeping for years. You think you're so clever, Nora. You think you can keep everything, but I know the law. I was an accountant. I know how to find things. I know how to take things, and I will take everything. You hear me? Everything, the house, the firm, the money, everything. You'll be left with nothing, nothing but that daughter of yours, and you can keep her. I don't want her. She's not my blood. She's not my family. She's just a reminder of the woman who stole my son. I had recorded that call 3 years ago, after Margaret had shown up at the house unannounced, drunk, screaming, threatening. I had not known why I was recording her, had not known that I would need the evidence, had simply done it out of habit, out of instinct, out of the knowledge that people like Margaret, people who are willing to say anything, do anything, destroy anyone, would eventually turn their venom on me, and that I would need proof. The proof was there, on a flash drive, in a safe, behind a painting, in my living room, waiting for the moment when Margaret's lawyer would overplay his hand, and I would destroy her. The first hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks after the funeral, 3 weeks of preparation, of documentation, of waiting. I did not attend, sent Sarah in my place, because I knew that Margaret was expecting me to be there, was expecting me to be broken, was expecting me to be weak, and I wanted to surprise her, wanted to keep her guessing, wanted to make her believe that she had already won. Sarah reported back that Margaret had been smug, confident, certain that the judge would rule in her favor, that her lawyer had presented a compelling case, that the evidence, though thin, was enough to convince the court to schedule a full hearing, a final hearing, a hearing where both sides would present their evidence and the judge would make a final ruling. She thinks she's won, Nora. She's already celebrating. She told me, outside the courthouse, that she was going to put the house on the market, that she was going to sell the firm, that she was going to use the money to travel, to enjoy her retirement, to finally live the life she deserves. Let her celebrate, Sarah. Let her think she's won. Let her make her plans. Let her spend her money, because in the end, she's going to lose. She's going to lose everything, and I'm going to be there, watching, smiling when it happens. Are you sure about this, Nora? Are you sure about your strategy? Are you sure that waiting is the right move? Are you sure that you're not giving her too much time, too much space, too much room to maneuver? I'm sure, Sarah. I'm sure because I know Margaret. I know how she thinks. I know how she operates. And I know that she will overplay her hand. She will make a mistake. She will show her true colors, and when she does, I will be ready, and I will destroy her. The weeks between the first hearing and the final hearing were the longest of my life, longer than the weeks after Thomas's diagnosis, longer than the weeks after his death, longer than any period of waiting I had ever endured, because this time I was not waiting for a medical miracle or a moment of peace. I was waiting for a battle, a confrontation, a moment that would determine the rest of my life and the life of my daughter, and I knew that I had to be ready, that I had to be prepared, that I could not afford to make a single mistake. I spent my days in the office, working with Sarah, reviewing the evidence, preparing the arguments, organizing the documents that would prove that Margaret had no claim to the house, to the firm, to anything that Thomas and I had built together, and I spent my nights in the living room, sitting in Thomas's favorite chair, staring at the painting behind which the safe was hidden. The safe that contained the evidence that would destroy Margaret, the evidence that she did not know existed, the evidence that she had been too arrogant, too confident, too blinded by greed to consider. The recording of Margaret's drunken rant was the centerpiece of my case, the proof that she had been planning to take everything for years, that she had never accepted me as part of the family, that she had never loved Elena, that she had never seen us as anything more than obstacles to be removed. I had listened to it so many times that I could recite it from memory, could hear the venom in her voice, the coldness in her words, the cruelty in her heart, and I knew that when the judge heard it, when the jury heard it, when the court heard it, they would see Margaret for who she really was, and they would not side with her. The other evidence was important too, the bank records showing that Margaret had been trying to access Thomas's accounts for years, the emails she had sent to his colleagues, trying to undermine his confidence, to turn him against me, to convince him that I was only after his money, the witnesses who had heard her threaten me, who had seen her rage, who had watched her transform from a grieving mother into a vengeful predator. But the recording was the key. The recording was the weapon. The recording was the thing that would make Margaret's lawyer turn white when he realized what I had. I try to bring you new stories every day. Your like, subscription, and comment truly inspire me to keep going. Let's continue. Elena knew that something was happening, that something was wrong, that the world she had known was shifting beneath her feet. She was 12 years old enough to understand, young enough to be scared, and she had started asking questions that I could not answer, that I did not want to answer, that I hoped I would never have to answer. Mommy, why is Grandma Margaret trying to take our house? I heard you talking to Sarah. I heard you say that she wants everything, that she wants to leave us with nothing. Why would she do that? Why would she want to hurt us like that? Grandma Margaret is not well, baby. She's sick, not in her body, but in her heart and her mind. She's been sick for a long time, and she's doing things that she thinks are right, even though they're wrong, even though they're hurting us. And I need you to remember that none of this is your fault. None of this is because of anything you did or didn't do. This is between me and her, and I'm going to handle it. Are you going to win, Mommy? Are you going to make her stop? Yes, baby, I am going to win. I am going to make her stop, and I am going to protect you, and I am going to protect our home, and I am going to protect our future because that's what I do, that's who I am, and that's what your father would have wanted. She hugged me, the way she used to hug me when she was little, when the world was simple, when the only monsters were under the bed, and I held her, and I felt her fear, her confusion, her grief, and I knew that I could not let her down, that I would not let her down, that I would fight until I had nothing left, and then I would fight some more. Margaret's lawyer, Bradford Stone, filed a motion asking the court to expedite the final hearing, claiming that Margaret was elderly and frail, and that she needed a resolution before her health deteriorated further. It was a transparent ploy, a desperate attempt to rush the proceedings before I could gather all the evidence, before I could prepare my defense, before I could find the witnesses who would testify against her. But the judge granted the motion, setting the final hearing for a date that was only 2 weeks away. 2 weeks to prepare, 2 weeks to strategize, 2 weeks to make sure that everything was in order. I was not worried. I had been preparing for this moment for years, had been gathering evidence, building a case, waiting for Margaret to make her move, and now that she had, I was ready. I put the briefcase back in the safe, closed the door, and went back to bed. I did not sleep, but I rested, and I waited, and I prepared for the battle that was to come. The morning of the final hearing dawned cold and gray, the kind of morning that makes you want to stay in bed, to pull the covers over your head, to pretend that the world outside does not exist. But I did not have that luxury. I had a battle to win, a daughter to protect, a future to secure, and I would not let the weather or my exhaustion or my fear stand in my way. I dressed carefully, a black suit that I had worn to dozens of hearings, the one that made me feel powerful, confident in control. I pinned my hair back, applied a small amount of makeup, and looked at myself in the mirror. The woman who looked back at me was not the woman who had buried her husband a month ago, was not the woman who had wept at the graveside, was not the woman who had held her daughter in the dark of the night. She was a warrior, a fighter, a survivor, and she was ready to win. Elena was still asleep when I left, her door closed, her room dark. I did not wake her, could not bear to see her face, to answer her questions, to explain to her that her grandmother was about to be destroyed in a court of law, by her own mother, by the evidence that would prove that she had been lying, cheating, stealing for years. I left a note on the kitchen counter. Gone to court. Back soon. Love you, Mommy. And I walked out the door, the old leather briefcase in my hand, the evidence of Margaret's crimes in my heart. I try to bring you new stories every day. Your like, subscription, and comment truly inspire me to keep going. Let's continue. Sarah was waiting for me at the courthouse, her briefcase in her hand, her expression grim but determined. She had been by my side through every hearing, every meeting, every sleepless night, and she would be by my side today, when I faced Margaret and her lawyer, when I presented the evidence that would destroy them, when I won the case that would determine the rest of my life. Are you ready, Nora? Are you ready to do this? I'm ready, Sarah. I've been ready for years. I've been ready since the first time Margaret threatened me, since the first time she tried to turn Thomas against me, since the first time she made it clear that she would never accept me, that she would never stop trying to take everything from me. I'm ready, and I'm going to win. Yes, you are, Nora, yes, you are. We walked into the courthouse together, past the security checkpoint, past the metal detectors, past the clerks and the bailiffs and the other lawyers who were there for their own hearings, and we found the courtroom where Margaret's case would be heard. The room was small, intimate, the kind of room where families were supposed to resolve their disputes away from the public eye, but there was nothing intimate about what was about to happen, and there was nothing private about the truth I was about to tell. Margaret was already there, sitting at the petitioner's table, her lawyer beside her, her expression smug, confident, certain that she had already won. She was dressed in black, her hair freshly done, her makeup carefully applied. She looked like a woman who had come to collect a debt, not a woman who was about to lose everything she had ever wanted. Nora, how nice of you to come. I was afraid you might be too ill to attend, too grief-stricken to face me, too weak to fight. But here you are, standing on your own 2 feet. I'm impressed, really. I didn't think you had it in you. You don't know me, Margaret. You never have. You never wanted to. You saw me as an obstacle, a threat, a rival for your son's affection, but I was never any of those things. I was his wife, his partner, the mother of his child, and I am going to prove to this court, to you, to everyone, that you have no claim to anything that was his, because he loved me and he trusted me, and he wanted me to have everything. We'll see, Nora, we'll see. The judge entered, a woman named Patricia Okonkwo, the same judge who had presided over the preliminary hearings. She was in her late 50s, with kind eyes and a firm voice. She had been on the bench for 20 years, had seen every kind of family dispute, every kind of lie, every kind of betrayal, and she was not easily impressed or intimidated. This is a case regarding the estate of Thomas West. The petitioner, Margaret West, is seeking control of the decedent's assets, including the family home and the law firm he co-owned with his wife, Nora West. The respondent, Nora West, has filed a response contesting the petition and seeking to have it dismissed. How does the petitioner wish to proceed? Margaret's lawyer stood, his voice smooth, practiced, the voice of a man who had done this 1,000 times before. Your Honor, my client, Margaret West, is the mother of the decedent, and she has evidence that her son intended to provide for her in his will, but that his wife, the respondent, concealed or destroyed documents that would have proved his wishes. We are asking the court to award my client the family home, a share of the law firm, and a portion of the decedent's savings. And what evidence does your client have, Mr. Stone? What documents, what witnesses, what proof? We have a letter, Your Honor, written by the decedent to his mother, in which he expressed his desire to provide for her, and we have witnesses who can testify that he was unhappy in his marriage, that he felt trapped, that he wanted to leave his wife but was afraid of the consequences. The judge nodded, her expression unreadable, and turned to me. Ms. West, how does the respondent wish to proceed? I stood, my voice steady, my hand steady, my heart steady. Your Honor, the respondent would like to present evidence that the petitioner's claims are false, that the letter she claims was written by my husband is a forgery, that the witnesses she has produced are lying, and that she has been planning to take my husband's assets for years, long before his death, long before his illness, long before any of this began. Proceed, Ms. West. I opened the old leather briefcase, pulled out the flash drive, and handed it to the bailiff, who handed it to the judge, who inserted it into her laptop and began to listen. The recording of Margaret's drunken rant filled the courtroom, her voice cold, cruel, calculating, echoing off the walls, and I watched Margaret's face change, from smug to confused, from confused to alarmed, from alarmed to terrified. You think you're so clever, Nora, you think you can keep everything, but I know the law. I was an accountant, I know how to find things, I know how to take things, and I will take everything, you hear me, everything, the house, the firm, the money, everything. You'll be left with nothing, nothing but that daughter of yours, and you can keep her. I don't want her. She's not my blood. She's not my family. She's just a reminder of the woman who stole my son. The room was silent. The judge's face was unreadable. Margaret's lawyer had gone pale, and Margaret herself was staring at the laptop, her mouth open, her eyes wide, her hands shaking. Ms. West, where did this recording come from, and when was it made? It was made 3 years ago, Your Honor, in my living room, after the petitioner showed up at my house unannounced, drunk, and threatened to take everything I owned. I recorded it because I was afraid, because I knew that she was capable of anything, because I wanted to protect myself and my daughter. And have you made any other recordings of the petitioner, Ms. West? Have you documented any other threats? Yes, Your Honor. I have recordings of phone calls, of conversations, of visits, all of them documenting the petitioner's threats, her manipulations, her attempts to turn my husband against me, and I have bank records, email, and witnesses who can testify that she has been trying to take my husband's assets for years. The judge looked at Margaret, her eyes cold, her voice hard. Mrs. West, do you have anything to say in response to this evidence? Margaret's lawyer whispered in her ear, but Margaret shook her head, stood, and faced the judge. That recording is fake, Your Honor. It's been doctored. It's been manipulated. It's not real. Nora is lying. She's always been lying. She's trying to destroy me. She's trying to take everything. She's trying to... Enough, Mrs. West. I've heard enough. I'm going to review the evidence, and I'm going to make a ruling, but I want you to understand that perjury is a serious crime, and that if I find that you have lied to this court, you will face serious consequences. Margaret collapsed into her chair, her face ashen, her hands shaking, and I sat at the respondent's table, my hands folded in front of me, my eyes on the judge, and I waited. The judge took a 30-minute recess to review the evidence, 30 minutes of waiting, of pacing, of praying, 30 minutes of watching Margaret and her lawyer huddle in the corner, whispering, arguing, planning, 30 minutes of watching the color drain from Margaret's face as she realized that she had lost, that she had been outmaneuvered, that the daughter-in-law she had underestimated was about to destroy her. I did not speak to Margaret, did not look at her, did not acknowledge her presence. There was nothing left to say, nothing left to do, nothing left to save. She had made her choices, had chosen greed over love, had chosen revenge over family, had chosen to destroy rather than to heal, and now she would have to live with the consequences. Sarah sat beside me, her hand on my arm, her presence steady, grounding, reassuring. You did it, Nora, you did it. No matter what the judge decides, you did it. You stood up to her, you fought back, you protected your daughter, and you should be proud of yourself no matter what. I don't feel proud, Sarah. I feel tired. I feel empty. I feel like I've been fighting for so long that I don't remember what it feels like to not fight. You won't have to fight anymore, Nora. After today, it will be over, and you can rest, you can grieve, you can heal, you can be the mother Elena needs, the woman Thomas loved, the person you were meant to be. I wanted to believe her, wanted to trust that she was right, wanted to let go of the fear that had been gripping my heart for weeks, but the fear was persistent, tenacious, a weed that kept growing back no matter how many times I pulled it out. I try to bring you new stories every day. Your like, subscription, and comment truly inspire me to keep going. Let's continue. The judge returned to the bench at 11 a.m., her face unreadable, her voice steady. I have reviewed the evidence presented by both parties, including the recordings, the bank statements, the emails, and the witness testimony, and I have reached a decision. The courtroom was silent, the kind of silence that presses down on you like a physical weight, the kind of silence that makes you forget how to breathe, the kind of silence that comes before a storm. The petitioner, Margaret West, has failed to provide credible evidence that her son intended to provide for her in his will, nor has she provided evidence that the respondent, Nora West, concealed or destroyed any documents. In fact, the evidence presented by the respondent suggests that the petitioner has been attempting to take control of her son's assets for years, using threats, manipulation, and possibly fraudulent means. Margaret's lawyer stood, his voice desperate. Your Honor, my client. I'm not finished, Mr. Stone. Sit down. He sat, his face pale, his hands shaking. The recording of the petitioner threatening the respondent is particularly damning. It reveals a pattern of behavior that is inconsistent with a grieving mother seeking to honor her son's wishes, and it suggests that the petitioner's motives are not rooted in love or loss, but in greed and a desire for control. Therefore, I am dismissing the petitioner's case in its entirety. The family home remains the property of the respondent, Nora West. The law firm remains under her sole control, and all other assets of the decedent are to be distributed according to his will, which names the respondent as the sole beneficiary. Margaret gasped, her hand flying to her mouth, her eyes wide with shock and disbelief. Additionally, I am referring the matter of the forged letter and the perjured testimony to the district attorney's office for further investigation. If it is determined that the petitioner knowingly submitted false evidence to this court, she may face criminal charges. Margaret collapsed into her chair, her body shaking, her face ashen. Her lawyer stood, his briefcase in his hand, his expression grim, and I sat at the respondent's table, my hands folded in front of me, my eyes on the judge, and I felt nothing. Not relief, not satisfaction, not closure, just a quiet, exhausted emptiness, the same emptiness I had felt when Thomas died, the same emptiness I had felt when Margaret first threatened me, the same emptiness that had been my companion for weeks and would probably be my companion for a long time to come. Ms. West, you are free to go. The court will issue a written ruling within the week, but I want you to know that I admire your courage, your strength, and your determination. You have been through a terrible ordeal, and you have come out the other side with your dignity intact. That is no small thing. Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you. The walk out of the courthouse was the longest walk of my life, longer than the walk down the aisle at my wedding, longer than the walk to the graveside at Thomas's funeral, longer than any walk I had ever taken, because this walk was the walk of a woman who had won, who had survived, who had proven that she was stronger than the woman who had tried to destroy her. Margaret was waiting for me outside, her face swollen from crying, her eyes red, her voice hoarse. You've destroyed me, Nora. You've destroyed me. I have nothing, nothing, no son, no grandson, no money, no house, no future, nothing. You've taken everything from me. I haven't taken anything from you, Margaret. You tried to take everything from me and you lost. You made choices, you told lies, you committed crimes, and now you have to face the consequences. That's not destruction. That's justice. You think you've won, Nora. You think you've won, but you haven't. You've lost too. You've lost Thomas, you've lost your husband, you've lost the father of your child, and no amount of money, no house, no law firm will ever bring him back. I know, Margaret, I know. And I grieve for him every day, but I don't need to steal from his memory to honor it. I don't need to destroy his family to feel close to him. I don't need to take what is not mine to feel whole. That's the difference between you and me. That's why you lost, and that's why I won. She walked away, her shoulders slumped, her head bowed, her body shaking, and I watched her go. This woman who had been my enemy, who had tried to take everything from me, who had almost succeeded, and I felt something I had not expected. Not anger, not satisfaction, not relief, but pity. Pity for a woman who had lost so much, who had sacrificed so much, who had become so bitter and so cruel that she could not see that the only person she had destroyed was herself. Elena was waiting for me at home, sitting on the front porch, her knees drawn up to her chest, her face pale, her eyes anxious. Mommy, what happened? What did the judge say? Did we win? Did we keep the house? Did we keep the firm? Did we keep everything? Yes, baby, we won. We kept the house. We kept the firm, we kept everything, and your grandmother, she lost everything she tried to take from us, and she won't be able to try again. Are you okay, Mommy? You look tired. You look sad. You don't look like you won. I'm okay, baby. I'm just tired. I've been fighting for a long time, and now that the fighting is over, I don't know what to do with myself. I don't know how to rest. I don't know how to be still. Maybe you should sit on the porch. Maybe you should watch the sunset. Maybe you should just be, without doing, without fighting, without worrying. Maybe that's what Daddy would have wanted. Maybe that's what he would have told you to do. I looked at my daughter, this girl who had lost her father, who had faced her grandmother's cruelty, who had watched her mother struggle and fight and almost break, and I saw something in her eyes that I had never seen before. Strength, not the strength of a child who is pretending to be brave, but the strength of a young woman who has faced the worst and survived, who has learned that love is stronger than hate, that hope is stronger than fear, that the future is brighter than the past. You're right, baby, you're right. Maybe I should sit on the porch. Maybe I should watch the sunset. Maybe I should just be, without doing, without fighting, without worrying. Maybe that's what your father would have wanted. Maybe that's what he would have told me to do. I sat on the porch, Elena beside me, her hand in mine, and we watched the sun set over the garden, the roses that Thomas had planted, the hydrangeas that I had tended, the lavender that bloomed every summer, and I felt something I had not felt in weeks, months, maybe years. Peace. Not the peace of forgetting, but the peace of accepting, of letting go, of moving on. Here's what I want you to know. If you're watching this and you see yourself in my story, the one who was betrayed, the one who was underestimated, the one who was told that you would lose, that you would be destroyed, that you would be left with nothing, hear me. You are not what they said you were. You are not weak, not helpless, not doomed. You are the one who survived, the one who kept going, the one who found a way to fight back. Not because you had power, not because you had money, but because you had the truth. And the truth, no matter how well it is hidden, no matter how many lies are told to bury it, always, eventually, comes to light. And survival is not pretty, it's not clean, it's not a movie where the credits roll and everyone lives happily ever after. Survival is messy. It's courtrooms and lawyers and sleepless nights. It's years of therapy and healing and learning to trust again. It's forgiving yourself for not being perfect, for not being strong enough, for not being fast enough, for not being enough. It's sitting on a porch and watching the sunset and letting go of the weight you've been carrying your whole life. But survival is also yours. No one can take it from you. Not the mother-in-law who tried to destroy you. Not the lawyers who tried to bury you. Not the family who didn't believe you. You survived, and that is the only victory that matters. My name is Nora West. I'm 54 years old. I live in a brick house with a garden and a porch and a daughter who is stronger than she knows. I am an attorney, 19 years of practice, and I have never lost a case, not in court, not in life, Not in love. I have a law firm that is mine, a home that is mine, a future that is mine, and a past that no longer defines me. The woman who tried to take everything from me lost, not because I was stronger, not because I was smarter, but because I had the truth, and the truth, no matter how long it takes, always wins. I try to bring you new stories every day. Your like, subscription, and comment truly inspire me to keep going. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever been betrayed by someone who is supposed to love you, leave a comment. Tell me, what did you survive? Thank you for listening. I'll see you next time.